Hello guys, welcome back to Pause, welcome back to Hysteria Pier. This is part 6 and this is the build. So today, as always, we've got a time lapse of today's episode, putting a new structure together between the main entrance and the arcade. So we'll get more into that in a couple of seconds. So as always, if this is the kind of content that you are into, so theme parks, simulation games, planet coaster, piers, I don't know, whatever it is that you are into, whatever pushes your buttons, if this is it, consider subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with all of our content. We're really pushing out quite a lot of Planet Coaster at the moment, and we also dabble in a few other games like Parkitect and things like that. So if this is your bag, join us and subscribe, and don't forget to like the videos. So enough of all that, let's talk about what we are doing today. So, in the last couple of episodes, I left a little bit of space between the arcade. We made the arcade in the last episode, but we left a little bit of space out the front of it. I asked you guys for some suggestions on what you'd like to see. My original plan was to fill in the two little strips of path between the pathway. The two little bits in between the paths with something. I had a little toy around with arcade machines. That didn't work. A few people suggested shops and things like that. It doesn't fit. I did try that off camera. The space wasn't wide enough. So what I thought at first, what I was going to do here, when I start getting this building in, I was going to do a midway strip. So I was going to put like one of those like midway games, like we have to throw the ball and knock down the cans, or you have to throw like a ball into like a bucket, and if it bounces out you lose. If you win a teddy, that kind of thing. As you do get kind of a lot of them sort of sideshow midway games on piers. But when I started to put it in, the sightline from the entrance for the arcade was getting a little bit ruined, with it being just sort of stuck in the middle of the path. So I rethink it in a minute. We move it to the edge, and it turns into a ticket booth. So think of it as a booth where you can buy ride tokens for the rides on the pier. So it's not going to be a pay to enter, as you don't get that in the UK. You don't pay to get onto a pier, but you do pay for the attractions on the pier, if that makes sense. So there's going to be two buildings opposite each other in this space where you can buy ride tokens. We've put some little signage on there towards the end of the video with some made up prices for tokens, that sort of thing. So that is what we are basically doing today, is getting in this building. We do a little bit of lighting around the area, and just at the start of the video you might have seen I just did a few little tweaks to the arcade building. I've put a few more finishing touches on the outside of that, sorted out the roof, and yeah, pretty much just touched it up. So that is pretty much finished now, the arcade, in terms of the outside of it. Still got a bit of work to do on the inside. The interior does need a bit of work, but that's something we will do as we move down the pier. So, like I said, today we are building these ticket booths. So originally I had an idea in mind, and then it kind of just went away with me as I went through this. There was no reference image this time. This was purely just a in my head type build. It's not based off anything. It is just something that I thought looked alright. I was watching some other pier builds the other day. I can't remember who it was. It was either Mike or I can't remember. It was somebody who was explaining about roofs and how to get the scale right by having sort of like a slightly lower roof, like a little canopy, to add sort of the realism to break up the building. And it's something that I thought was a really good tip, so it's something we have a go with here. We do lift it up slightly in a minute, but you can see I've got this little overhang above the ticket booths, and it just gives a nice little canopy to the entrance area, really, and I think it works quite well. So again, whoever it was who put that tip out in their video, sorry I can't remember, but thank you. It works really well. We use it as quite a little feature as we get down here as well, and it works quite nicely. We end up putting a fair bit of detail on the front of this building. What you'll see as well towards the end is I wanted to make the front very grand to match the rest of the pier, but the back of it I've made it a bit garish and a bit tacky. And again, it is a conscious decision. So you see, it's quite a stark contrast. So we've used quite traditional pieces at the front, and it all kind of works. It all looks quite nice. All the signage fits the theme. Everything looks really, really nice. I do change that ticket sign a little bit later on for a better one, but the front fits really nicely. The back, I've kind of gone for lit up signs, lit up lettering, to make it just look dodge. So the idea for that is, this is something, again, the storyline behind this is that these buildings have been here for quite a while. Maybe they used to be something else before the rides were put on the pier. Maybe it did used to be a shop that they've turned into a ticket booth. But these buildings, in the grand scheme of things, have been here quite a while. But as times have changed, as they've turned it into more of a sort of attraction theme park kind of pier, the guys who now own it have decided, well, we don't need to put any of this sort of budget in there. We'll just stick up some really crappy lit up signage so people see it as they're walking up the promenade. So that's the angle I've gone for. Very similar to what I mentioned in the last one about the general buildings are going to look really nice from the outside, and then the interiors are going to be a little bit dodgy, like we did with the arcade. And that's a general thread that I want to go through this pier. Most of the buildings are pretty much in now, to be honest with you. I think there'll be 1 or 2 more main buildings towards the back end of the pier. I think I'm planning to do like a pub, like a bar, like a restaurant. As again, it's something that is quite standard on a UK pier. Sort of at the end of it, you'll have a bar, a pub, a restaurant, a kind of cafe type building, where people can sit, get a pint of beer, or just order like a plate of chips or whatever. So that's something we'll probably build at the end, and that'll be quite a nice big grand building. There might be a few odd little bits in the middle, which again there'll probably be another smaller ticket booth sort of towards the centre of the pier. But that is about it for the buildings. So I wanted to get the buildings in place first, so we had like a nice theme, and we got the classic elements of the pier in there, which is why I've sort of focused on this area quite a lot and kind of left the rides. So, but that is something we will start picking up in the next one, getting some pathways in, filling out the fencing, getting some more rides on there. And I'm still undecided on the coaster, and a few people have mentioned it in the comments, and I've mentioned it as well. It's very, very uncommon for UK piers to have coasters on them. I mean, other than like your typical travelling wild mouse coaster or a travelling log flume, it's very, very rare you will get any kind of coaster on a pier. So the only thing I can think is, originally I wanted to try a wooden coaster, and I did actually try and build one not so long ago, and it just didn't work. So I'm thinking the only thing that I can think of is maybe using the new wooden wild mouse coaster. So the one that's sort of based off the wild mouse that's no longer with us, from Blackpool Pleasure Beach, rest in peace. I think maybe that coaster type could work quite well if I make it look like a travelling ride. So what I mean by that is, most piers, I don't know about in the US, so apologies for anybody from the States. I've only ever been to one sort of boardwalk pier in the States, which was in San Diego. I can't remember what it's called, but I just remember going to it quite a number of years ago, and I remember there being a coaster, there was like a wave rider, there was a few random rides and attractions, but it all felt a lot more polished and a lot more presented than anything you get in the UK. UK piers are naff, like properly naff. They are dirty, they are old, they are basically fairgrounds. People have bought fairground travelling rides, carnival rides, and just stuck them on a pier. And that is what we are doing here. So as soon as you get past this entranceway, it looks really nice and grand at the moment. That ain't going to stay. As soon as we get through that arcade, it's going to be naff central at that bottom end. And this is an example of what I was saying. This really naff lettering. Purposely, I've put this on this side to catch the eye as you're walking down the promenade. And this is the kind of things these piers do nowadays. They're owned by people who don't care about the heritage of the pier. They are just there to make money from the rides. And unfortunately, that is just the world we live in. And I am trying to make it as realistic as possible, and that's the approach I'm going for. So it gets a bit of both in there. It gets some of the grand buildings and the nice stuff, which we are doing, and the details, but also gets the realism from the crappy signage and the uselessness that is British piers. So that's what I'm going for. That's the general idea. So in terms of actual rides then, definitely going to keep the 2 that's on there already. Like I mentioned, I'm probably going to toy around with the idea of the Wild Mouse, the wooden Wild Mouse, and make it look temporary. So I might even build not custom supports but custom base, so it looks like it is still on like a metal framework, which is a lot of these sort of travelling coasters have like a metal framework underneath, so that it doesn't need footers. So obviously most roller coasters have very deep concrete footers in, but travelling rides don't have that. So that's something I'm going to have a go at. I'll probably have a test off camera to see if it works, and if it does, that's something we'll try and fit on the end. Again, it depends on how big it is, because it's not the biggest pier in the world. So that's something which we will all have a go with, and hopefully it'll look quite nice. One definite thing I am going to do is a funhouse, and potentially a ghost train as well. Now, I don't think I'm going to do them as actual rideable rides. Obviously, the funhouse, I can't. These are just going to be them kind of, again, travelling funhouse rides that you get at these kind of carnivals, these fairgrounds, this kind of thing. They've pretty much just come on the back of a truck, back of a lorry, and they fold it all out, and it's a ride. And that's, just stick it on a generator, away you go, charge a couple of quid. So I want to build something like that with a really sort of tacky front. I mean, a lot of these pieces with the clown heads and that kind of thing, I need to use them somewhere in this build, as my plan, like I've said at the start, is to use every single piece, ideally, from the new pack in this build somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to do. Just quickly, I'll mention this is just the ticket sign that I'm making for the ticket booth, as you can probably tell, so it's nothing amazing, it's just very quickly something thrown together. Yeah, so I'm going to do definitely going to do a funhouse using the clown pieces and all that kind of stuff. Really tacky, really loud and garish, and lights all over it. That's definitely something we're going to have on the pier. And like I said, if I've got space, I might do a ghost train, a very small one, like them really tacky ones you get where it's like just like a figure of 8 or whatever, where it's all you kind of just cheap theming, really tacky stuff with a big siren noise at the end. You know the sort I mean. So again, that's something we'll probably do as we get into it, but mostly the rides are going to just be your standard fairground flat rides. And that's, like I say, is something we're going to get into the next episode. We still have a little bit of space on the promenade that I need to finish off. I need to do a little bit of work on the road. So there's still a fair bit to do, and this is only part 6. At the start I did sort of estimate it would be probably a 10-part series, and I'm still pretty much on track for that. So I think maybe 1 or 2 on the rides on the pier, another 1 or 2 on the promenade, and then maybe one final episode of finishing touches, lighting, and that sort of thing. So we are still about halfway through, but there's still a fair bit of fun stuff coming on this build. So anyway, back to what we've done today, as I've been rambling for ages. You'll see a few little details I've put in, like the murals on this little section here, a lot of this new lighting, just to give it a nice classic look. I don't want to go too mental with the lights. Originally I was going to do spotlights, but I thought you wouldn't get that on a pier. Just really subtle stuff, using a couple of these new lampposts, which work really well actually on a pier, and just generally letting it light itself, which is kind of what I've done. Like I said, I had a little play with kind of spotlights, but I just think it doesn't need it. I don't want to overly lit this thing. I want to use a lot of the festoon lighting and the popcorn lighting, I think it is the term that a lot of people use. I want to add a lot of that around, because that's the sort of stuff from a distance that you see, and it's always plastered on these kind of builds. So that's something we'll do as we get on further down the pier. So we're coming to the end of the footage today. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to give us a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you've got any queries, questions, comments or suggestions, as always, drop them down below. Yeah, there's plenty more coming from this build. And don't forget the experience video with some glamour shots, slow motion footage and a little bit of music is coming out straight after this video. So watch them both and enjoy. Any suggestions, like I've said, drop them down and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers guys, bye.